of this is obvious. They are desperate, they are completely determined, and they're completely certain of the rightness of their cause. You have to ask how it is that people get into that mindset. And that is another story for which perhaps we haven't got time.
Just one thing then, Dr. Allen. I mean, there's a plane still missing at the moment. In your opinion, do you believe this is the end of the attacks, or is this the beginning in a way? You know, is this the start?
Frankly, no way of knowing.
Right. Well, okay. Well, I think best to leave it there. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Alan George.
Thank you very much.
Middle East expert there, he writes for The Economist, among other places.
Yeah, it was good of Dr. George to come on, but quite frankly, I just don't think that on a day like today, we're only hours away from the most devastating terrorist attack the world has ever seen by a long, long way. We should be analysing the motives to justify this attack, which I think Dr. George was about to get onto. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm a million miles away from there. I'm far more concerned about thousands of casualties in New York. In New York, you know, the United States is a free country. That's why people are able to go there and mount these attacks. I mean, the free world exists because it's a democracy. And I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to be discussing with people the reasons behind the motives for these attacks. It's a ridiculous situation to get into.
Again, he's asked a question, and I suppose he wants to answer it in the way that he sees most fitting. But yes, it is difficult, isn't it, to look behind reasons when basically most people around the world, although I am seeing pictures of Palestinians on the street and various Arab groups. I don't know if celebrating is the word, but certainly chanting and making the most of what they see is, I don't know, do they see it as a plus point, Mike? Let's move on, shall we, and cross to Fox News. I think we can hear some more details from our Americans at Fox News.
Where 150 to 250,000 people each day take off and land, the busiest airport on the west coast of these United States, eerily empty. That's the effect here on the other side of the country. John Scott, back to you.
John Dupree in Los Angeles, thank you. Again, these pictures just coming into us now. This is unedited video of the pandemonium, the fear, the chaos in Lower Manhattan as the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, the tallest buildings in Manhattan, once the tallest buildings in the world, as they collapsed in an incredible shockwave of dirt, debris, smoke, and certainly a catastrophic loss of human life. This was the reaction there in Manhattan. Nobody ever thought those towers could fall. Almost certainly the terrorists who tried to inflict this didn't think they could fall. They perhaps hoped it would happen, but nobody thought there would be this kind of catastrophic damage. William Daley and Howard Safer. William Daley, a former FBI agent who investigated the first World Trade Center bombing. Let's talk about the bigger picture once again. Sure, the terrorists wanted to inflict maximum damage, maximum loss of life, but their real goal is mental, isn't it? Aren't they trying to scare America?
That's true, John. In fact, my role was one after the incident in helping put security back in place with these once prestigious locations. And the thought is, when we do security planning and try to predict where terrorists will attack, we always think of what are the spots that are indicative of the American way, whether it's the World Trade Center, whether it's some other landmark, or what they call a trophy building that they like to have exactly what we see here, be up in smoke, and for everyone to be panicked and concerned. So when we try to predict terrorist acts, we look at these, but we really, at the very far end of the spectrum, would think that would ever come down to something like this. We always looked upon something worst case, like vehicle bombs we saw in Oklahoma City, or we've seen over in Europe, individual bombings.
You're listening to Talksport. We're expecting to hear from George Bush shortly, but we've seen some horrific pictures, and I think we've just seen some
more incredible images. What we saw there was we saw people fleeing through the streets of Lower Manhattan as the rubble and the smoke and the dust and the heat of the collapse of the Twin Towers was chasing them down the street. It was like as though they were running from a tidal wave, but it wasn't a tidal wave of water, it was a tidal wave of terror. It was rubble, concrete, explosive mixtures. Flames were chasing them down the street. These people were literally running for their lives, Rich.
Large boulders coming towards them. I mean, the cameraman who must have been holding the camera, you saw people running in fear of their life. You didn't know what was coming next, and all of a sudden the camera was engulfed by smoke and then the screen went black. I mean, just...
What might have happened to the cameraman, we simply don't know.
I mean, Mike, you know, the Americans we've spoken about, are they going to... Will they strike back?
Oh, yes, and undoubtedly they'll strike back. This has happened before to them on a much smaller scale. President Reagan, he struck against Libya in 87. I'm sure I've got that right. It was 87 because it was a simple issue of American soldiers being murdered. I think it was in Germany. I think it was a nightclub in Germany. There was an attack on American soldiers. Reagan had lost his temper with Colonel Gaddafi of Libya. It wasn't the first time there'd been an attack on American military personnel in Europe, and he'd warned him before not to engage in state terrorism. Reagan hit back a devastating volley from Lakenheath Airport. Lakenheath US Air Force Base in this country was the seat of the attack. The planes flew out of England. They flew down the Atlantic coast of France because France would not allow the aeroplanes to cross their airspace. The planes turned left into the Mediterranean, into the middle of the Mediterranean. They turned right into Libya. They went into Libya and they struck it mightily, and I know that because I happened to be in Libya at the time.
I can see that the Taliban
news conference is just about taking place.
Just about to take place. I can also tell you the Pentagon is still under fire. Of course, we will bring you all the news conferences as soon as they do start. You know, 5 floors of the Pentagon collapsed. That building is still on fire. Mike, before we hear from the Afghanistan terrorist Islamic fundamentalist group, or I don't know if I should call them terrorist group, they may or may not have been involved. We shall hear. Let's hear what they do have to say.
And very terrifying incident. Any question? Any question? Please. Have you received any kind of information, any kind of communication from the United States or any other organization? Regarding the اوس تر ټولو مهمه خبره ده چې هغوی پیغامونه باندې اخته دي کېدای شي چې یوازې هغوی ته د تسلیت پیغامونه تللي وي او دا چې اسلامي امارت سره چا تماس نیولی دا خبر تر اوسه نه شي. No contact up to now. They might be busy or surely they are busy in the rescue operation. So they need condolence, but up to now no communication from him. Does the Taliban categorically condemn these attacks on the United States? Taliban په مرحله واره کې ده په امریکا باندې دغه حملې وکړي. موږ د توریزم ټول انواع همیشه غندلې ده. د پخوا څخه په دې باره کې پالیسي شته. Our policy was very clear from the very beginning, and we have criticized, and even now we criticize terrorism in all its forms. Can you rule out any involvement by Osama bin Laden? Osama bin Laden last year, no, up till now, no one has blamed or accused him formally. The Taliban have said that they will maintain Mr. bin Laden without communication, unable to communicate. Can you be convinced at this time that your policy of keeping him without communication has been effective in recent months? طالبان ژمنه کړې چې اسامه بن لادن سره به هر قسم اتصالاتي امکانات به لري چې تاسو دا خبره کوي دوی چې اوس هم هغه پالیسي په دې باندې عملي ده. موږ په پالیسي کې تغیر نه راغلی دی. No change in our policy in this regard. Do you think the policy is working, Mr. Mitwakil? او دا پالیسي کار هم کوي. اشاره کړې ده چې خبره نه suspicions obviously turn to Osama bin Laden. In the media, he's been mentioned as possibly having a hand in this. Are you concerned that Afghanistan could be on the receiving end of recriminations of reprisals on attack? توجه یا ګمان ته راوړي مطبوعاتو یا میډیا ګډون هم اخیسته ده کابینه او کوي چې افغانستان د دې اسلام الدین یا د اسلام الهدف وګړي فکر کوم چې دا غنوم اخیسته هم یوازې به د فقط څه ټول په تفسیر کې ډېر نوم راځي او فلم خاصوي I think that even if someone has taken his name in the media, it might be just because his name was repeatedly mentioned in the past in the comments. Just for this reason, his name might have been repeated. Just the second half of the question, though, are you concerned that Afghanistan could receive this prior attack? We don't see or foresee any difficulty in this regard because there is no argument or no reason for it. If it were to happen, if there were to be attacks, what would the implications be of such a situation? If there were attacks from... As Jonathan said, if there were to be reprisals against Afghanistan, what would the implications of that be? It is a little bit earlier to say at this stage, but as we said that we criticize all forms of criticism. So if Afghanistan is attacked, then we can call it state terrorism. There's also been concerns expressed about Arab mercenary fighters in Afghanistan and allegations that there may be an Arab connection. These acts of terrorism have also been raised. Can you talk to those concerns? Can you rule out any Arab links? अफगानिस्तान की अरबी अखबार या बाज़ ग्रुपों ने शलूवान दुनिया खतर एहसास हुई ترشد الحقوق لاست الودنة في فيك هم ردوي.
زه فکر کوم چې دا پیښه ډېره لویه پیښه ده او دا به داسې چا پسې مسؤل چې زړه ته مو نه لګېږي چې دا کار وکړي دا به کېدای شي چې یو ناانصافي وي یو څوم تخمین ولري.
It is a very big and enormous incident. So just to connect it with some people that even one's logic cannot even accept it. So in my opinion, it might not be justified. Mr. Madhukil, are you surprised that the United States has received this sort of attack? The American media should be this Hamalato هدفه الاتفاق الإيراني كان سياسي.
د دې خبر ده چې د خپل نوې دا پیښه کېدای شي د امریکا په تاریخ کې ډېره لویه پیښه وي. د هر چا لپاره طبیعي خبر د حیرانۍ وړ ده.
Naturally, because this might be the only and the unique kind of incident in the history of the United States. So, like anyone is also... What I'm getting at is...
You're listening to Talksport. That was Waki Ahmad Mutawakkil, who's the foreign minister for Taliban, the Islamic fundamentalist group. Mike, basically...
Well, to sum it up, I mean, what he's talking on behalf of Osama bin Laden and his organisation. No, let's get this straight. Waqil Ahmad Mutawakkil is the Taliban foreign minister, right? Yeah. Taliban are the rulers of Afghanistan. And he's saying that they have had no involvement and they have no idea who's involved. Then further asked, what about the presence of Osama bin Laden in your country? Mm-hmm. This man is a devoted and declared terrorist who has made constant threats against the United States, who said only a few weeks ago he was going to inflict great terror on them, but he said that on a regular basis over the past 5 years. He said that Osama bin Laden is not allowed external communication from within Afghanistan to people outside, and therefore he's suggesting that Osama bin Laden is a contained force and was not responsible for being involved in this these series of devastating attacks today.
At a time like this, you know, we have to be cynical. I mean, first of all, how do you contain a terrorist like that? And second of all, you would say that because you'd be under fear from attack from the United States.
Of course you would. Osama bin Laden himself and his organisation have denied involvement separately from Waqil Ahmad Mutawakkil, the Taliban foreign minister, also making that point. But I just take what you said absolutely seriously, Rich. If you suddenly give any indication or any succour or comfort to the idea that you were involved, the next thing you can expect is a volley of F-111.